goes in. Sorry, people. We're meant to start at 6:30. I had to reschedule it only for an extra 5 minutes because I was running late. Just came back from the gym. Lost track of time. But obviously we're here. We are here. Big up to each and every one of you for coming through. Each and every time, as I said. And you know what? I think this is gonna be a good one, because I think the show that I done yesterday, got me thinking about doing this stream. And big up to Reluctant Gamer, big up to Sham as well. And yeah, as I said, talking about the likes of Neymar, I was sitting there today thinking, you know what, Neymar used to be part of a front three, both at Barca, both at PSG. And I thought to myself, you know what, let me go through the best front threes of all time, from the recent era. And as I said, I've made a list, guys, of the front threes that I believe should be in the argument as the best front three of all time. And I've got my outstanding favourites, I would say, and it's not easy because the list that I've compiled is very tough, and what I would say, there is really no loser. There's a crackling sound coming from my side. Guys, can everyone hear me? Everyone hear me? Is there a crackling sound still happening? Guys, give me a thumbs up if it's stopped. Let me know. I mean, it seems to be fine from my end. I don't know if it's synced up with YouTube. Sham or Reluctant Gamer, give me a thumbs up, man, to let me know if it's all right now. Let me know. Yeah, give me a thumbs up, guys. Let me know if it's still crackling or if it's okay now. Nothing worse than starting the bloody stream and there's a few issues. Let me know. Just give me a thumbs up so I know. Okay, so every time I talk you can hear me, but there's a noise. I'm not too sure. My internet connection's fine. Obviously, I don't feel like I'm static. I don't know. I don't know if I should come out and come back in. The only thing is I'm going to set up this whole stream again. So you're saying it's static? I don't really know. Yeah, guys, what I'll do, I'll carry on, and if it does get worse, then let me know, and I'll try and jump out and jump back in. But at the moment, it looks like it's all right from my end, So, but yeah, getting back to what I was saying, as I said, guys, the best front threes of all time. I have my favorite, but as I said, this list that I've compiled up, for me, there's going to be no sort of last place or loser, because there were some top front threes, and as I said, man, it wasn't easy. But yeah, we're going to go through it. And as I said, if you guys have any other front threes that you want to put in, make sure you drop that in the comments. But I've got a list as long as, let me see. So I've got, there's 16 I've done. There's 16 possible front threes that I'm gonna mention, and then obviously at the end we're gonna obviously compile who we think is in the top three or who's number one. Yeah. Yeah. Big up, Sham. Sham, listen. Oh, do you know what? Ha, Sham. That's one I actually didn't put down. Funny enough. Okay. Messi, Henry, Eto'o. Okay, so let me go through my list, and then we're gonna go through each and every one, and then we're gonna decide who's the top. But that's funny because that was the three that I didn't mention together, because I actually forgot Henry was with Messi and Eto'o, you know. So we're going to go through all of them, and then we're going to go through them one by one on the qualities. So the first two, the first one I've done is quite obvious, you know, MSN, Messi, Suarez, and Neymar. Then we've got Messi, Eto'o, and Ronaldinho. Pedro, Messi, and David Villa. Di Maria, Benzema, and Cristiano Ronaldo. Obviously, BBC, Bale, Benzema, Ronaldo. Big up DXR as well. Then we got Robben, Drogba, Duff. Robben, Drogba, Joe Cole. Robben, Ribery, and Lewandowski. Sterling, Aguero, and Sane. Mahrez, Aguero, and Sterling. Salah, Firmino, Mane. Ronaldo, Tevez, and Rooney. Willian, Diego Costa, and Eden Hazard. Marco Reus, Robert Lewandowski, Mario Gotze. Serge Gnabry, Lewandowski, and Leroy Sane. And then Messi, Neymar, Mbappe. And then obviously we've just added in Salah, Firmino, and Messi, Henry, and Eto'o. So if we go through, we're going to start from the last on the list and then work our way back to the front. And again, guys, keep your comments coming in, and we're just going to go through each front three. So starting off with Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe. So, you know, I think on paper, you know, that is probably arguably the perfect three in terms of pace, skill, creativity, and goals, you know. And the likes of Messi and Neymar do figure a lot in my list, you know, such as the quality of both players. And obviously the way that PSG played with those three, you know, you had Messi playing from the right, Neymar from the left, and then Mbappe through the middle. And I think on paper, you know, that three looks frightening, you know. But I think if you're a midfield behind that, you've got three players there that arguably want to be the number one player, you know. And I think the likes of Messi and Neymar obviously playing together at Barcelona as part of MSN, you know, you'd think that those two had that telepathic relationship anyway, you know. And I think personally with those two, you know, you're getting creators and you're getting goal scorers. I think if we're looking at Messi and Neymar, they were probably past their peak going to PSG, especially when they were playing together. And again, you had the likes of Mbappe that was benefiting from the likes of those two being creators, you know. I think the one disappointment with Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe is that you would have thought with that front three, you know, that would have at least taken PSG to a Champions League, which never obviously happened. And for me, I think you got three individual quality players, but the balance in terms of, you know, all three of them wanting to be number one. You know, at times you'll see all three players, you know, in front of the ball. And again, it wasn't good balance for the PSG midfield, especially because the PSG midfield of Verratti, and at the time I think it might have been Danilo Pereira or someone else in there. You know, it was too much to do in the end for those players. Big up to Storm, big up to Mustafa as well. And as I said, Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe, you know, on paper, you know, three great players individually, but as a collective unit, I don't think it was working that well. And obviously, the Champions League, which never came, is a massive thing as well. You know, moving on, Serge Gnabry, Robert Lewandowski, and Leroy Sane. So I think in terms of the balance there, you know, I think the balance there is very good because when I mentioned Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe, you've got Messi and Neymar who are two number 10s. And then you've got, Storm, big up, man. I will get back. Guys, listen up. I will get back to each and every one of your comments after. But obviously, there's a few things I've got to run through. So bear with me. if you're still here, I will get back to you once, obviously, I've spoken about the front threes. So moving on to, as I said, Lewandowski, Gnabry, and Leroy Sane. I think in terms of, in terms of the balance there, you've got two out-and-out wingers in Gnabry and Leroy Sane, left foot and right foot. In comparison to Neymar and Messi, they're two number 10s that are creators. Sane and Gnabry are two wide players that want to get the ball into the box and create for their striker. And I think the likes of Lewandowski, had a great time, you would say, with those two. Pure creators from out wide, and then as I said, you've got Lewandowski, who's the serial goal scorer. I think that front three there, as to be expected. I think that front three is. I think they obviously won a few Bundesligas, definitely. But in terms of Champions League, I don't believe they won Champions League together. But, in terms of individual quality, as we know, Leroy Sane in his peak, mad dribbler with the ball, very direct as well. I think with Sane now, Sane's obviously, he's obviously taken a step back now, obviously playing for Galatasaray now as well. And what I would say, obviously, when he was in his peak, he was frightening, especially when he was at Man City. But the combination with him, Gnabry, and Lewandowski, was frightening, man. And that Bayern Munich team there took some stopping. And as I said, Bundesligas, they won. I can't remember the actual total, but Lewandowski scored a lot of goals for Bayern Munich, and he was aided very well by the likes of Gnabry and Leroy Sane. Moving on. This was one of my favourite front threes, if I'm honest. And again, which contained one of my favourite players, but again, kind of dropped off. And that's the three of Robert Lewandowski, Marco Reus, and Mario Gotze. So again, just like Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe, you've got the likes of Marco Reus and Mario Gotze, who are two number 10s, you would say. And then you've got the serial goal scorer in Lewandowski. And that Borussia Dortmund team with the likes of Reus, Lewandowski, and Gotze, I remember getting to a Champions League final where they eventually got beat by Bayern Munich. And obviously there's a certain front three with Bayern Munich that is on my list. And and as I said, we'll talk about them. Big up DXR. DXR says Blazhakovsky. Yeah, listen, man. Blazhakovsky, Lucas Piszczek, and this is what I'm going to go to now. So when it was Gotze more played in the 10, where you had Blazhakovsky on the right, Marco Reus on the left, Lewandowski through the middle, and then you had Ilkay Gundogan and I think it was Sven Bender or Lars Bender in the midfield. Sham, listen, man, it's we're doing club, not national. That front three obviously was frightening, but we're gonna do club rather than national. But as I said, that Borussia Dortmund team, I think they went to a three at times, and you had Gotze playing from the left, Reus on the right at times, and Lewandowski through the middle. And as I said, you got two 10s and a striker, and that team got to the Champions League final. And as I said, they deserve a mention definitely, because for me, I love individual quality. And you had Gotze and Marco Reus, two players that were highly technical players. Gotze was the golden boy of German football at one time. The same with Marco Reus. Obviously, Gotze fell off, with the injuries, loss of form. I believe he's at Eintracht Frankfurt now as well. But yeah, he was one of my favourite players coming through, and was one of the Golden Boys as well. Obviously, he won the Golden Boy trophy as well. And that front three for just pure quality and in terms of balance was good, man. You had the goal scoring in Lewandowski. There wasn't outrageous pace between Gotze and Reus, but you had Marco Reus who had a change of pace. Same with Gotze, and Lewandowski again wasn't lightning quick, but a good change of pace. So for me, Yeah, good front three. Well, great front three, I would say, and definitely deserved a mention. And if I remember right, that front three was part of the team that under Jurgen Klopp that won the Bundesliga as well. So yeah, great team. And again, they had the likes of Neven Subotic, Matt Hummels at the back there, Marcel Schmelzer at left back, Lucas Piszczek right back, and then a midfield of, I say, Gundogan and Bender in there as well. So yeah, very, 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 very good front three there, and these definitely deserve a mention. Moving on to the next three, I think they're worthy of a mention. Although for me they won't be the top, but I think it's definitely worth mentioning this three, and that was Eden Hazard, Diego Costa, and Willian. And I think if you look at Willian's more of a winger, Eden Hazard more of a number 10 playing from out wide. And then you've got Diego Costa, the target man, battering ram of a striker. And that three there, obviously, as we know, won league titles with Chelsea. Didn't win a Champions League, I don't believe. I think they might have won Europa, if I'm right. If anyone knows if Chelsea won a Europa with Costa, Hazard, and Willian, again, put that in the chat, but I can't actually remember. So yeah, for me, as I said, you got a number 10 and you've got a 10 come wide man in Willian, and then you've got the target man Diego Costa. And I think in terms of, in the Premier League, that three there was very dangerous, And as I said, Eden Hazard for me is one of the greatest players to play in the Premiership. I have him in my top three. So yeah, he definitely deserves of a mention. And as I said, yeah, that front three for me. And again, any Chelsea fans in the chat, let me know, because I'd go as far as say, that was probably one of your most potent front threes. I know there's obviously a few others that obviously I'm still to mention. But yeah, as I said, man, that was a good front three in Hazard, Costa, and Willian. Moving on, and obviously being a Man United fan, this was when, I could sit back and really enjoy watching Man United play. Obviously, now isn't really the case, at the moment. Hopefully that changes. But the front three of Cristiano Ronaldo, Carlos Tevez, and Wayne Rooney. Now, what's funny really is that if you look at all three players, you've actually got one natural wide man, and that was Ronaldo. But such as Ronaldo's goal scoring, as he was going year by year at United, you had three players there that really wasn't really playing as wide players in a sense. They were just, it's a case of just putting them on the pitch and they'll figure out, they'll obviously interchange a lot as well. I think the way they set up, you had Ronaldo playing from the left, and then you had Rooney on the right at times, and then you had Tevez through the middle. But then easily you could have Ronaldo on the right, Rooney on the left, Tevez in the middle, or you could swap Tevez and Rooney. They were so interchangeable, it was frightening. But what I liked about this Man United front three is that you had the likes of Tevez and Rooney, who were just complete dogs. Hunger to match as well, and the quality, and they were for me very identical in terms of style of play. The hustle and bustle of Rooney, and the same with Tevez, but they were highly technical players. And having two of them in one team, was a problem for any defense. And then you had Ronaldo, obviously at the time, who was arguably battling with Messi for the best player in the world, and he was just a goal machine. So that front three there for me was frightening. You had literally pace, technical ability, goal scoring, creativity, the hunger, the dogging, both Rooney and Tevez, the hard work as well. And that front three was so balanced in terms of, how they could interchange and dovetail with each other. I think if we're looking at the ideal three in terms of, complementing, a natural striker, it isn't that balanced. But in terms of what all three of them offered, it worked well. And for me, as a Man United fan, that has to go down as possibly my most favourite front three of all time in Rooney, Ronaldo, and Tevez, And again, Man United won multiple titles. They won Champions Leagues as well with that three. And again, it was a shame that Tevez actually didn't stay, and as we know, went on to win titles at Man City. But what a front three that was, man. Ronaldo, Rooney, and Tevez. Arguably one of the best front threes of all time in the Premier League, I would say. You know. Moving on, and I think of recent times, I think it's safe to say, this three might go down as probably the most balanced and possibly the best front three. Most people might say in the Premier League history, and that's Liverpool's Mo Salah, Roberto Firmino, and Sadio Mane. Now, what is for me with those three, and again, many people, it's important that people understand how balance of a front three works, because as I mentioned, I think to you guys yesterday, you hear so many people saying certain players are not strikers, and I think the likes of Salah, Firmino, and Mane, they typify why you don't need to have an out-and-out goal scorer, because if you've got goals coming from out wide, you need a forward that knits it all together. And Roberto Firmino, for me, done that. And if you look at Roberto Firmino as well, coming from Hoffenheim, Firmino is actually a number 10 attacking midfielder. But because of the qualities that Jurgen Klopp was looking for, Firmino fitted the number 9 role, which meant that he could play as the false 9, drop into midfield, and link the attack together, which is why the likes of, Mo Salah and Sadio Mane thrive so much, because you had the unselfish, and the unpredictability of Bobby Firmino, and then you had the pace and the power and the goal scoring, and the intelligence as well of Mo Salah and Sadio Mane. So that balance was perfect, and what it is for me as well is that Philippe Coutinho, I believe, if I remember right, I think Coutinho either played in midfield as one of the three, or he just went to Barcelona when that front three was put together. Because if you're looking at a three there, it's like Coutinho, really, as good as he was, couldn't fit in that front three because of the job that Firmino done. And obviously you had the likes of Sadio Mane and Mo Salah offering the pace, the power, and obviously the goal scoring. So the balance there was perfect. And as you can see now, Mo Salah obviously still going strong now. Was an absolute goal machine. I do think that Sadio Mane was underrated, because I think because of Mo Salah's numbers, I think Mane was always, overlooked rather than the likes of Salah. But for me, I think Mane was just as important as what Salah was, because Mane, as I said, was someone that was getting goals, but was the unselfish, unsung hero in a sense as well. But because of Salah's numbers, Salah was always talked about as the main guy. For me, the most important player for them was Bobby Firmino. And again, if you're a real football fan, you really love football, you would know why Bobby Firmino was the absolute key. Because no Bobby Firmino, that front three doesn't work as good as it should, because he knitted it all together. And as I said, he was the key player for me in that front three. But I'll go as far as saying that front three for me definitely is possibly in the top 2 of all time in terms of what they won. I believe they won Champions League and league title as well with that front three. I think that front three probably would look at it and say they should have won more, but such as Man City's dominance, I think that's why, it's probably not as potent as a front three in terms of winning titles. So, but yeah, as I said, that front three for me was very good. Moving on, Riyad Mahrez, Sergio Aguero, and Raheem Sterling. I think in terms of the balance, you had Riyad Mahrez for me one of the best wingers to play in the Premiership, you know. And I think what Mahrez brought to Man City, you know, Mahrez for me was better at Leicester in terms of being able to just do what he wanted to do. Guys, let me know if you can still see me. I see this light is it's killing me really. 1 minute. Is that better? No, it's still bad. Guys, can you still see me? So yeah, Riyad Mahrez for me was a goal scorer, but most importantly a creator at Man City. And I think the Riyad Mahrez that we saw at City was still a very good Riyad Mahrez, but in terms of the level that he was at Leicester, I think he wasn't the same, because Leicester, they just let him just do what he wanted, get on the ball, and as I said, just show his quality, you know. And that front three, you know, you had Aguero, who was the prime goal scorer, but Raheem Sterling, you know, I'm not a massive fan of Sterling, but obviously Sterling was at his best at Man City, in my opinion, in terms of the back post, you know, getting the goals. I think at Liverpool, he was still young, still raw, but Man City, I think he became more of a potent goal scorer. Obviously, had the likes of the Kevin De Bruyne's, you know, that was obviously providing for him as well. But I think in terms of the quality that Mahrez had and Aguero had, Sterling was, you know, the beneficiary of that front three as well as the likes of Kevin De Bruyne playing in the 10 as well. And again, that front three was part of multiple league title wins for City. I don't believe that front three didn't win Champions League. But yeah, that was a potent front three, man, for me. And as I said, not for me the best front three of the Premier League era, but definitely deserves a mention. Guys, as well, make sure to let me know who is your best front three. Put that in the chat. Let me know. And as I said, if you're still here watching, I will get back to your comments after I've gone through the list. Moving on, you know, staying at Man City, you know, staying with Raheem Sterling and Sergio Aguero, but rather than Riyad Mahrez, we had Leroy Sane. Now, I think that front three in terms of the balance, again, as I mentioned with Bayern Munich when they had Leroy Sane, Serge Gnabry and Lewandowski. Again, you had two out-and-out wingers in Gnabry and Sane. At City, it's the same thing with Sterling and Sane on one flank, providing for the goal scorer in Sergio Aguero. And again, I think Sane didn't stay at Man City for too long because, you know, obviously Bayern Munich came calling. There was talk about him falling out with Pep as well. But when Sterling, Sane and Aguero were playing together, you know, that was arguably the best front three in the league at the time. You know, three dangerous players. Aguero, for me, was the best striker in the league as well. And Aguero was a striker that could drop in as well and link the play, but was just a prime fox-in-the-box goal scorer as well. You know, and when you had the likes of Sterling, Sane, I think Sterling was chipping in with goals. Sane was more of the creator. As I said, that three there was a great balance for me in terms of wingers wanting to create for the striker. Same as what happened at Bayern Munich in a sense. And as I said, yeah, definitely deserves a mention for me. Big up to Barbara Joseph as well. Big up to Pixel Cube. As I said, guys, I'll get back to your chats after. Big up to Daniela Iacona as well. And as I said, guys, make sure you smash that like button on the way in as well. I've only got 4 likes on here. Smash that like button. Obviously, help the channel to grow. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to my channel at GavGoesIn. Next on the list, you know, probably one of my favorite front threes. You know, one of my favorite front threes. And that is the combination of Ribery. If anyone knows Ribery, yeah, that is Arjen Robben and Frank Ribery, the nickname of Ribery. And then you've got Robert Lewandowski again, who's featured again. Now, for me, that's been Bayern Munich's best ever three as a trio, in my opinion. You know, Lewandowski for me was just scoring goals galore at Bayern Munich with those two. I believe those three as well won the Champions League when they beat Dortmund in the final. When it was no, was that Dortmund? No, sorry, I think it was that three that beat PSG in the final actually when Neymar was there with I can't remember the two he was playing with. It was who was it before that? I can't remember, but I think they've won the Champions League definitely Bayern with that three there. And for me, in terms of balance, you've got the left foot of Robben on the right. You've got the right foot of Ribery, both players cutting in, and then you've got the Lewandowski who's the goal scorer. And again, a front three that has everything: creativity, goals. One on one, devastating. Robben with his pace. And what I liked about Arjen Robben is that many people that obviously watch Robben will just know that will just know where Robben's going, but you can't stop him because his close control was just something else. And the amount of times I've seen Robben score a very similar goal, you know where Robben's going, but you couldn't stop him because he was just that good. And then on the left hand side, you had Frank Ribery. Frank Ribery again, another one of my favorite players to watch. Frank Ribery was actually a number 10, but then transitioned to playing more from the left. Cutting in, using his close control, his technique, and the combination of Robben, Ribery, and Lewandowski, I think at the time was probably the best in Europe. Or definitely one of the best in Europe. And yeah, those guys scored goals galore. The creativity was there as well, and yeah, definitely deserves a mention. As I said, multiple Bundesligas, Champions Leagues. And again, why are we surprised? Having a front three like that, you can't help to fail but win titles under that three. Moving on to Chelsea, staying with Arjen Robben, and this was a young Arjen Robben as well, but with Drogba and Joe Cole, and again, Didier Drogba now features. And for me, Robben was young, obviously coming from PSV Eindhoven, previously playing for Groningen in Holland as well. And when Robben came, I think Robben was possibly the closest player to like a Ryan Giggs in terms of the pace. For me, he was quicker than Giggs, and just a direct running. And then you had Joe Cole, obviously again, Joe Cole, formerly a number 10, but at Chelsea playing as a left wing as part of a front three. And for me, yeah, again, balance there was mad. You had Drogba, the target man, and again, Drogba didn't score loads of goals, but he facilitated an attack because he could hold the ball up, get numbers, link the play. And as I said, if you've got a striker like that and you've got wide players in Joe Cole who's creative, and then you've got the pace, the directness of Robben. Again, the combination there's mad, and Robben, as I said, even though he was younger, was devastating before he made the move to Real Madrid, and then obviously Real Madrid to Bayern Munich. He's had a great career, Robben, and but when he was in the Premiership, he was devastating with Joe Cole and Didier Drogba. And then moving on, Drogba and Robben stayed there, obviously, but had Damien Duff. And I think Damien Duff's worth a mention. If anyone knows Damien Duff, formerly of Blackburn Rovers, then made the move to Chelsea. I think Duff at the time as well with Drogba and with Robben. I think Duff was more of the direct winger, playing from the left. Robben was obviously on the right. And again, I think it's worth a mention because, again, Drogba was the linchpin for that strike force there, really. But you had the likes of Duff and Robben, who were just one-on-one. And again, in terms of wide players, these were the modern day wide players in terms of getting down the outside, putting crosses in for the striker, And again, Drogba obviously was thriving off having two wide players that just want to get at their fullbacks, isolate them one-on-one, get the crosses in so he could score. And again, under Jose Mourinho, obviously, I can't remember what season it was, but Chelsea didn't. I think Chelsea went through a whole season. I could be wrong, but conceding something like 12 goals or something like that. And I think it might have been when they had Robben, Drogba, and Duff, or it might have been Robben, Drogba, Joe Cole. And as I said, both sets there were instrumental in, you know, providing an attacking platform to help sustain attacks for Chelsea, you know. And as I said, Drogba for me, you know, was a constant problem for any defense, you know, with his physicality. But yeah, but again, he had players around him that would just offer the pace, you know, the creativity and the one-on-one situations to allow him to thrive as well. So yeah, two good combinations there for Chelsea, man, 100%. And yeah, I wouldn't say Robben, Drogba, and Duff make my number one in terms of Premiership, but and the same with Robben, Drogba, and Joe Cole. But definitely, yeah, but definitely deserves a mention for 100%, man. Big up to Exedra as well. Big up, bro. As I said, man, each and every time, appreciate you guys coming on. Guys, if you're just coming in, as I said, make sure you smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Those of you that have just come in, obviously we're talking about the best front threes of all time. Guys, I will be putting this into chapters, so obviously I've been through a list already. So you can obviously go to the separate chapters to see what I've been talking about. But yeah, 100% I'll be putting it into chapters once the stream's ended, or once obviously it's been uploaded to my channel. But yeah, big up for you that have just come in. Now we're moving on to Spanish-based front threes, you know, and there have been some great front threes there. We're now going to move on to the famous BBC. And guys, BBC is not what you guys are meaning. Big up. It's not what you guys are meaning. But it's Bale, Benzema, and Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, obviously, Real Madrid, you know, as we know, Real Madrid, they've had some front threes in their time. And again, there's probably front threes that I've missed. And if you guys know of any other front threes that I've not spoken about, then make sure you put that in the chat as well. But for me, BBC, you know, that was, if I look at the balance of Ronaldo, Benzema, and Bale, again, that had absolutely everything, you know. You had Bale and Ronaldo, really, who were clones. Just one was left-footed, one was right-footed. I think in terms of Bale, Bale had the technical ability, the pace, the strength, the eye for goal, you know, the powerful running as well. Bale was an absolute joke. And I think, for me, you know, and this might be a bit of a shock to people, but not to me. If we're talking about the best British player of all time, for me, it's easy. It's Gareth Bale. I think Gareth Bale was that good, you know. And part of that front three, he was, you know, I mean, if you're picking in terms of importance, it's hard to say who was the most important, because I think all three of them were as important as each other, you know. And as I said, man, Gareth Bale was unbelievable, man. Him coming to Real Madrid, you know, took to it like a duck to water, let's be honest. And yeah, he was mad. Big up Exedra, bro. Yeah, it's not longevity, man. It's just how good they were at the time. But as I said, I'll get back to each and every one of your questions properly. I've got a few to go through. You know, I think we've had 16 different combinations. And again, there's probably a few that I've missed. But as I said, we'll get back to it. So yeah, Gareth Bale, man, was unbelievable. And as I said, he was a major part of that front three. If anyone remembers the overhead kick that he scored in the final against Atletico Madrid, I remember. I mean, the actual athleticism of Gareth Bale was mad. You know, to score an overhead kick like that from that distance was crazy. And as I said, man, definite for me, the best British player of all time. Cristiano Ronaldo, as we know, you know, was battling Messi for the Ballon d'Or. And this is when Ronaldo actually redefined his game to becoming a pure goal scorer. Because, again, if you're a Ronaldo fan, I hear it, you know, but Ronaldo, for me, had to redefine his game. And again, this is no slight on Ronaldo, because for me, it takes intelligence to redefine your game to keep relevant with the best in the world at the time in Messi. But Ronaldo redefined his game to get numbers, um, because as I said, he he had to keep up with Messi, and yeah, he became an absolutely goal machine at Real Madrid. But he owes a lot of it to Karim Benzema, And again, there's no point talking about Ronaldo because we all know about Ronaldo, the career he's had and what he's done. But I think Ronaldo owes a lot of his career, in a sense, to Karim Benzema. And I tell you why. Because Karim Benzema came in, as a pure number 9, coming from Lyon. Again, for those of you that don't know, Karim Benzema modeled his game on R9. And when Real Madrid bought him from Lyon, he was actually linked to Man United, and I was begging Man United to sign him. But when Real Madrid come calling, it's only one winner really. And what I would say is that when he went to Real Madrid, because if anyone remembers, he went to Madrid at the same time as Ronaldo, and Benzema had to redefine his game, not because he wasn't good enough to lead the line for Real Madrid, but such as Ronaldo's status in the game, Ronaldo was very goal hungry, and Ronaldo had to be the guy getting the numbers to compete with Messi, which meant that Benzema had to adapt and play more from the left to allow Ronaldo at times to go through the middle and get the numbers, But that just shows how intelligent Benzema was, because as you can see, when Ronaldo went, Benzema went straight back to being the main striker, being the focal point. And look at what Benzema done. Won a Ballon d'Or, was instrumental in Real Madrid winning a couple of Champions Leagues. And yeah, as I said, man, he was a massive player in that front three. Again, for me, people might say Ronaldo was the key one in terms of his numbers and his big game moments. But I can't pick a front three. That I can't say who's the most important out of those three, because they were all important in their own right. And again, that front three had pace, it had strength, it had goal scoring, it had creativity in both Bale and Benzema. It had the big game, big match moments in Ronaldo and Bale and Benzema, really. Yeah, that front three had everything. I think the one disappointment with that front three, they probably would have expected to win a few more league titles. Because if anyone doesn't remember, I think Ronaldo only won 2 league titles at Real Madrid, which might be a bit of a surprise to people. But Ronaldo only won 2 league titles, I believe, at Real Madrid. Obviously, they won multiple Champions Leagues, but in the league they won only 2. So I think that front three would have expected to win more. But there's a certain front three that we haven't got onto yet. That was arguably the main reason for that, But yeah, BBC, as I said, man, what a front three that was. And then we move on to, obviously, again, worth another mention. Spoken about Benzema and Ronaldo already. Ronaldo, obviously, again, was playing probably a bit more from the left before he transitioned to playing more through the middle. Benzema was playing through the middle a bit more. But again, him and Ronaldo were starting to dovetail in terms of Ronaldo going through the middle, Benzema coming out to the left. But on the right, it wasn't Gareth Bale, it was Angel Di Maria. And to be honest with you, Di Maria, for me, was very underrated, Di Maria, for me, was a menace, man. He was so creative, and again, he was the winger before Gareth Bale came in. And even when Bale did come in, I think Di Maria was probably, I'm not sure if he was playing as much. But as I said, he was a great player, Di Maria, man, and obviously played for United as well. Before he went to United, he was causing so much problems for Real Madrid, and again was instrumental in them winning one of the Champions Leagues. I remember, because if I remember, I think did he set up the goal or get a goal in in the final or something like that. But yeah, Di Maria was class, man, and again, if you look at the balance of Di Maria, Benzema, Ronaldo, you've got Di Maria, who's the pure winger, creative, You've got Ronaldo, again, numbers, but was probably a bit more of the winger in comparison to when he was Bale, Ronaldo, and Benzema. And you had Benzema, who was the link man, score goals and create as well. So yeah, another great front three. If I'm honest, who's the better front three between Bale, Ronaldo, Benzema, Ronaldo, Di Maria? For me, there's nothing in it, but I'd probably just say Bale, Ronaldo, Benzema. But Di Maria, what a player he was, man. Great player. Um, Moving on. Now we go back to obviously Leo Messi, but I'm going to touch on Pedro, Messi, David Villa. Again, I'm going to touch on David Villa. David Villa for me was one of my favorite players. David Villa obviously coming from Zaragoza first and foremost, then to Valencia, and then finally to Barcelona. And I think what's important as well, obviously under Pep, this is when the coming of age with Messi in terms of the numbers side of it for Messi, because when David Villa came through, I never saw David Villa, because I always saw David Villa playing through the middle, at Valencia, and when he was playing with David Silva. I think Juan Mata might have been there as well. They had obviously this. I think it might have been Vicente left winger as well. I mean, David Villa was clearly going to be going to one of the top clubs in the world, because he was that good, playing for a Valencia team really that had a lot of quality in their team, but never really were going to win the league, because you had the likes of Barca and Real Madrid. But David Villa was destined to go to one of the top teams and went to Barca. But did I ever see David Villa playing as a left winger? If you look at Spain, for instance, when they had Villa, Torres, and David Silva at one time, the way that Spain played, Villa played from the left, cutting in on his right foot, such as his intelligence and quality on the ball. And obviously Fernando Torres played through the middle. So again, I could see David Villa transitioning to that, but I thought definitely with the likes of Messi and Pedro there, I thought you would have seen Pedro from the left, Messi on the right, and Villa through the middle. But obviously Pep had other ideas, and what a masterstroke it was, because he had Messi dropping deep, combining with Iniesta, Busquets, and Xavi, and then you had the pace and the clinical finishing of David Villa and Pedro to get in behind, so Messi can create. But Messi was that good. If anyone remembers, Messi actually broke the record for the most goals in a calendar year. He got 91 goals in a calendar year, which is insane, really. Let's be honest, man. That's unheard of. And it was a masterstroke from Pep, really, to play Messi as a false nine. And Messi's numbers just went through the roof in terms of his goal scoring and his creativity as well, and his assists. So yeah, man. Yeah, that front three for me was class. And again, that front three was part of the front three that beat United in the, I can't remember what season it was, in the final. And funny enough, David Villa, Messi, and Pedro all scored in that game. And that front three there, yeah, it was dangerous. Not the best front three for me in terms of the other names we're going to go through, but to think that Messi's been part of three of the best front threes of all time is some doing. And as I said, Pedro, Messi, Villa in terms of combination was mad. The masterstroke from Pep to play Messi as a false nine, I didn't see at the time, but it was a masterstroke, because when you've got the four of Busquets, Xavi, Iniesta, Messi as like a four in that midfield, that four that can keep the ball as well, and then you've got the pace of Pedro and Villa in the wide areas, perfect, And as I said, yeah, what a front three that was, man. Moving on. Now, we're getting into territory now where Messi's going to feature again, and big up to Sham as well. Sham said Messi, Henry, and Eto'o. I forgot about those three, and I'll put them in my list now. So if I talk about Messi, Henry, and Eto'o there, again, Messi coming through, playing from the right, and then you had Henry from the left, Eto'o through the middle, and again, what a front three that was. I can't remember if they won a Champions League or not, but I think Henry for me, it just showed you the amount of quality that Barca had, because Henry was Henry was Arsenal's number one player, and he was the number one player in the league as well. But when he went to Barcelona, for me, the way that I saw Henry, he was just another great player in a great team, and it showed you the amount of quality that that Barca had. And him playing on that left hand side, I think there was a quote that Henry actually said that, you know, Pep wanted him to stay out wide, you know, whereas Henry probably wanted to get involved a bit more. But, you know, Pep wanted him to stay wide to create the gaps in the midfield and in the attacking line as well, you know. And when Henry went to Barcelona, I think it's safe to say that he didn't decline, but he wasn't the same Henry because he had to fit into a system. Whereas at Arsenal, you could arguably say he was the system at Arsenal. But at Barca, he was just another great cog in a great wheel, basically. You know, and as I said, man, what a player Henry was. And part of that front three, again, that front three had pace, power. Messi was the young gun coming through. And it's very obvious that he was looking at, you know, a potential world beater, potential best player in the world in Messi. And as I said, I think that deserves a mention. But I'm going to go on to Messi, Eto'o, and Ronaldinho. So, again, you've got two of my GOATs ever in Messi and Ronaldinho. And as I said, Ronaldinho for me, if you look at a lot of teams now where they've got the right foot on the left-hand side, the left on the right-hand side, for me, Ronaldinho was one of the very first that started that, you know. Ronaldinho was a massive pioneer for football in terms of, if you look at all the Scorpion adverts as well, he was the face of that. And Ronaldinho, for me, was one of the main reasons for, especially for me, the love of football. And as I said, his time at Barcelona, where he had, where he's part of that front three, with Eto'o, Messi. You know, if anyone remembers, it was Ludovic Giuli before that, French international, before Messi came through. And that front three, again, like, had everything. You know, I think in terms of Messi at his peak, as we know, he wasn't at his peak with that front three, but he was still devastating. And obviously, everyone knew that Barcelona had a potential world beater on their hands. And again, if anyone remembers, there was an interview that Ronaldinho done, and I think the interviewer asked Ronaldinho, "How does it feel to be the best player in the world?" And Ronaldinho replied by saying, "He's not even the best player at Barcelona." And obviously at the time, people were thinking, "What's he talking about?" And obviously he was talking about Messi because he knew what Messi was going to become. Obviously, having witnessed him in training, and obviously Ronaldinho was a big nurturer of Messi coming through. So again, Messi wasn't at his peak, but what he was doing coming through as what I think he made his debut at 16, and obviously coming through the system, he was Ronaldinho Gaucho. Come on, man, yeah, big up, Broderick. So as I said, that front three had everything: creativity, strength, pace, goal scoring. You know, big game players, like anything you can think of, skill, that had it in an abundance, you know. And for me, in terms of front threes, that has to be, if I'm looking at the top three, for me, that has to be in the top three for sure. Messi, Eto'o, and Ronaldinho, you know, and they're definitely in the top three for me, you know. And yeah, when you've got two of my GOATs in there, yeah, it's an easy decision for me. And let's not count out Samuel Eto'o, because Samuel Eto'o, for me, when people talk about the best strikers, you know, ever, I think Samuel Eto'o gets overlooked for me. Why that is, you know, people might have their other reservations for that. But for me, Samuel Eto'o is one of the best strikers to play the game. You know, he was absolutely devastating, Eto'o. You know, there was games where Barca looked like they were at a stalemate and he'll just come through and just get a goal. And again, Samuel Eto'o used to be at Real Madrid before Barca snapped him up. You know, Cameroonian international, you know, African player of the year multiple times as well. Yeah, great player. But we're going to move on. And obviously you guys have seen in my thumbnail. And again, this is the last three that I can think of. And again, if you guys have any others that you can think of and I haven't spoken about them, then guys, make sure you put that in the chat. But my favourite front three for me, and no surprise, they're in my thumbnail, and that's MSN, Messi, Suarez, and Neymar. And I think for me, why it's my favourite front three, and again, there's nothing in it because I did like that Messi, Eto'o, Ronaldinho. Um, and I did like, obviously, the other front threes as well. But for me, the reason I'm going with MSN is because, for me, you had the best player in the world in Lionel Messi. No arguments. And obviously, this is when Messi was at his peak as well. And then you had, well, people might say he's at his peak when he got the 91 goals in the calendar year. I'd say that, and obviously with MSN as well. So you had Messi, for me, the best player in the world. Then you had Neymar, who was, for me, along with Messi, the best player in the world. I know people might say Cristiano Ronaldo, but Messi, in terms of footballing ability, Messi and Neymar were the two best players in the world at the time. So you've got two of the best players in the world in Messi and Neymar. And then you had arguably the best striker in the game in Luis Suarez. I think the only ones that could rival Luis Suarez for that title was probably, you're looking at Lewandowski, Sergio Aguero, or Karim Benzema. I think Harry Kane was still a bit, wasn't really there. But I think Lewandowski, Aguero, and Benzema and Suarez were four of the best strikers in the game. And to think you've got four of those quality strikers, and you have to look at what we're actually dealing with now is actually a crying shame, because you had four literally great strikers there. You know, yeah, big up Nick, man. I'll get back to your chats after. But in Messi, Suarez, and Neymar, and again, it's important people actually realize this, you know, and this is where balance comes into it. If you look at Messi, Suarez, and Neymar, you know, you've got three creators there. You know, Luis Suarez was a creator, was a mad creator. You know, people might think Luis Suarez a creator. He was a mad creator. Not as creative as Messi and Neymar, but in terms of strikers, he was probably the most creative striker of his era. I would say, along with Benzema, you know, in terms of, you know, unselfish creating for his team. So in first and foremost, you've got Messi, and again, this is why I'm saying it's the best three for me, because if I look at the list of strikers that I've got, and we go through Suarez, Eto'o, Benzema, you'd say, or Ronaldo, Drogba, Lewandowski, Firmino, Aguero, Diego Costa, Tevez. I think Luis Suarez, for me, as a striker, was the best creator as a central striker. And then you've got Messi and Neymar, who are two of the best players in the world. You know, I look at Messi, Eto'o, and Ronaldinho, and again, it's very close. You had Ronaldinho, the best player in the world. Messi was still young, coming through, and obviously was the best young player in the world at the time. But then you had Samuel Eto'o, for me, who was definitely in the top three strikers in the world. But I look at creativity, and I think Suarez was probably a better creator. So that's what tops it for me. But again, you had MSN, who were three creators, and you had three goal scorers, which is most important. You know, so if you look at Messi, even though you had Suarez, who was the striker, the goal scorer, Messi was getting more numbers than your actual striker. But Suarez still got a lot of numbers. Neymar still got a lot of numbers as well. So that front three had literally everything. You know, it had goals, it had creativity, assists, technical ability, the dog in Suarez as well, the skill of Neymar and Messi and Suarez. So they had literally everything. Like there was no weakness there. And again, they've got a midfield behind them in Iniesta, Busquets, Rakitic. You know, that three there. So yeah, MSN for me. Yeah, what a free. Like, and as I said, I think in terms of a free as well, I'm not sure if there's been a front three that has scored the most amount of goals than what MSN done. You know, I think if I remember right, between the three of them, I believe they might have hit about 100 goals between the three of them. I could be wrong, but I think they might have hit something close to that. So yeah, what a front three that was, man. And again, I'm gonna go through your chats now. But then at the end, guys, we're gonna go through the top three, you know, and see where we figure, you know. But guys, big up yourselves each and every time. There's 9 likes, 6 of you watching at the moment. If you've just come through, make sure you smash that like button and make sure you subscribe to my channel and let me know who your front three is. Just go through your chats now. So we've got so as Sham said, Messi, Henry, and Eto'o. Yeah, listen, that was a great front three. Spoken about them already. Yeah, big up. So Sham says Rooney, Ronaldo, Tevez. Yeah, went through that as well as BBC, Bale, Benzema, and Ronaldo. So Sham says the Chelsea ones have to be near the bottom of the list. Yeah, listen, I mean, such as the list anyway, the I think the list is so hard. I think, yeah, it won't feel right putting any three because, you know, they are all good in their own right. But I think you're probably right, Sham, in terms of if we're gonna put them in ranking order, you know, I think they might be at the bottom. But them being at the bottom doesn't mean that they're the worst. It just means that this list is just hard to compile, you know. Big up to Mustafa. Mustafa says, "Bro, come to Fenerbahce." I just come from Turkey actually, so but I think I was more near the Galatasaray side. So big up, man. Big up to Storm as well. Sham says one had Duff, the other had Joe Cole. They were good players, but not up the likes of Neymar, Hazard, Salah, and so on. Yeah, listen, I agree. I think if anyone remembers Damien Duff was a very good player. You know, probably underrated, but yeah, in that combination with him and Drogba, and I believe it was Robben or Joe Cole. Yeah, they were a problem. So big up to Storm. Storm says, "Hey, bro, Messi or Neymar?" Again, another great comment. And, you know, I hate these comparisons at times because it has to be answered, but it doesn't feel right picking one or the other. Messi or Neymar? Put it this way, yeah? Put it this way, and I'll make it quite simple. As I've mentioned already, my 3 GOATs are Messi, Ronaldinho, and R9, the real Ronaldo. Neymar's up there as well, but if I can only pick 3, I have to pick them 3. And so if I'm gonna say Messi, but the most simplest way I can say to you about Neymar is that if Neymar wasn't in the era of Messi and Ronaldo at their peak, as I said yesterday, Neymar wins about 6 Ballon d'Ors because he was the best player, but politics and other things as well meant that those two were battling it out. But Neymar was every bit as good as both of them. You know, he was more talented than Cristiano Ronaldo, as talented as Messi. But again, numbers and politics probably played their part in why he was overlooked by both of them. But as I said, nothing's going to tell me that Messi isn't one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest. But to pay homage to Neymar, Neymar would have won 6 or 7 Ballon d'Ors. If the Ballon d'Ors that Messi and Ronaldo won, Neymar would have won all them if he wasn't in that era, in his peak. So that's how highly I rate Neymar, you know, because Neymar was a top player, man. Sham says MSN tops it if we're looking at GA for sure. Yeah, listen, this isn't just based on GA. It's based on overall in terms of what all the front threes have to offer, you know. And as I said, it's hard to compile a top 3 because they're all good in their own right. But MSN, as I said, it's going to be hard to beat them because they had so much quality and they had the numbers and the trophies to back it up. I think MSN won Champions Leagues as well. I can't remember how many. I think 1 or 2. And obviously league titles as well. Storm says, "Are you kidding me? Mbappe, at least let me laugh." Not quite sure about that one, but big up. Sham says, "Oh yeah, R9, Ronaldinho, Rivaldo for Brazil." Yeah, that front 3 was mad. Obviously that front 3 won the World Cup as well. But obviously we're doing club wise, and again, Ronaldinho was a young Ronaldinho. He wasn't the Ronaldinho at Barcelona. So yeah, but obviously that's a That's a national team thing there. EXR says after that Bayern started stealing BVB players. Yeah, listen, man. If you look at the Bayern the players from Dortmund that have gone to Bayern Munich, you know, Lewandowski, Mario Götze. Again, Mario Götze this shouldn't have gone there. Mats Hummels as well, another one. Who else was there? I think it's only been Hummels, Gotze, and Lewandowski, if I remember. But again, you're taking away 3 central players for Borussia Dortmund. You know, that's their spine there, really, of quality. So yeah, what I would say, I think when that happens, it's a problem. And I think if you look at Bayer Leverkusen, I think Bayer Leverkusen might be the new Borussia Dortmund in that sense. You think of Jonathan Tah is now at Bayern Munich. You know, they would have loved to have Florian Wirtz, but obviously he went to Liverpool. You know, maybe there might be a few others they might go for. But big up. Sham says, respect for putting Salah, Firmino and Mane up there. Yeah, listen, there's no bias here, man. I'm a football man, you know, and because I support Man United, I'm not going to just ignore Salah, Firmino and Mane. You know, as I said, if someone was to say to me that Salah, Firmino and Mane are the best front 3 in the Premier League of all time, you know, that'd be very hard to argue with, you know. Yeah, obviously it's about opinions, but definitely they have to be up there, man. 100%. So Pixel Cube says, who is going to join Juventus or Man City? Oh, who is going to win Juventus or Man City? Pixel, I would say Man City, you know. I think Man City, I think they've won both games so far. You know, obviously the signings that they've brought in as well. I think 2 of them are starting in Eto'o and Reinders. I think Cherky's on the bench. But they've got quality in abundance, man. So I'd expect them to win. But I think City will need to be looking out, obviously, for Kenan Yildiz. You know, obviously he's the star boy of Juventus' team. Douglas Luiz is playing today as well, who I rate highly. I think Vlahovic is back in the team as well. So yeah, it won't be an easy game, but I'd expect Man City to win that 100%. Exedra says BBC was insane. MSN, Rooney, Ronaldo, Tevez. Yeah, as I said, I mentioned Ronaldo, Rooney, and Tevez. Again, definitely for me the best front 3 that United have had, and I think we have to give credit to Carlos Queiroz as well, because I believe it was Carlos Queiroz that was identifying that front 3 as what would be good. And let's not forget as well, Nani was part of that as well. Obviously, wasn't a starter. Obviously, you can't be a starter really with that 3. But yeah, Carlos Queiroz was a main reason as to why United changed the formation and went to a 4-3-3. You know, big up. So Sham says, I prefer Ronaldo, Bale and Benzema than MSN, but that's because I'm biased being a fan of Madrid. Yeah, listen, I mean, there are going to be people that does prefer that front 3. I'm not going to lie, but I think if we compare the front 3, I think the best way to compare that front 3, really, is if we do player for player, Messi, Ronaldo, Messi for me, Neymar or Bale. Not easy, but Neymar for me. Suarez or Benzema. Again, not easy, but probably just Suarez. And again, I wouldn't blame anyone that wants to go with BBC because that's a great front 3 there, you know. But for me, topping the MSN is difficult because, as I said, that front 3 had literally everything. There was no weakness there. So yeah. I think if we're talking about in terms of athleticism, pace, I think BBC probably has the overall pace because you've got the likes of Bale and Ronaldo, who are literally complete athletes. But in terms of quality, I can't look past MSN for sure, man. But big up. Yeah, that overhead kick. Oh, it was against Liverpool in the final. You sure? I thought it was Atletico Madrid. But yeah, okay, if it was against Liverpool, then I'll take your word for it, Sham. But yeah, that over kick from Bale was mad. Um, and as Exedra said, Neymar was unplayable in that front three. He was. I think how good Neymar was in that front three, you could arguably say Neymar was the best, but that was arguably, number one of that front three in terms of how good he was playing, and that level was high because, Messi was just Messi, Suarez was just on a mad thing, and Neymar again was mad. And if anyone remembers, there was a period where Messi was out injured, and it was just Neymar and Suarez, and Neymar was carrying that team. Some of the goals that he was scoring, So yeah, again, Neymar was unplayable, man, and this is why he was talked about as being the best player in the world at that time, But him and Messi together, man, and Suarez was frightening. I'm telling you. So Exedra says, I know Neymar from his Santos days. He hit his peak at Barca. Unfortunately, he didn't win more individual awards. Yeah, listen, I think I mentioned this yesterday as well, Sham. So if anyone remembers, Neymar's the only player to be in the top 10 Ballon d'Or voting, playing in Brazil. For me, that's never going to happen again because to get into that top 10 Ballon d'Or voting, and let's remember, that list at the time would have been different to what it is now because the quality of footballer when Neymar was coming through is a lot higher than what it is now. And Neymar was that good playing for Santos in Brazil. He was in the top 10 of the Ballon d'Or list, which is unheard of. Yeah, big up gamer, man. David Villa was my favourite at Barca after Messi. Listen, David Villa, when he was at Valencia and going to Barca, was one of my favourite players, hands down. He was ridiculous, For me, he was Spain's best player at the time as well. And that Spain team was stacked of quality. Iniesta in there, Xavi, Busquets, even likes of Marcos Senna, David Silva, Cesc Fabregas, they were stacked with quality. And Santi Cazorla as well. But David Villa was one of my favourite players, man. He was ridiculous, Big up to Nick Fadley. Of course, MSN is the GOAT. Yeah, listen, you're not going to hear me arguing with that. So Exedra says front three is hard since if I could I'd put Cole, Bex and Giggs, but they played 2 forwards with York. Yeah, so it's a front three in terms of formation. So I remember actually when Alan Shearer and Michael Richards actually done I think they done their best three. But again, their best three was flawed because they put Henry, Bergkamp and Pires, and again, it just shows you the understanding of what they were doing is not there because you can't put Pires, Henry and Bergkamp because back then when Pires was playing with Bergkamp and Henry, they were playing in a 4-4-2 because Pires played on the left, Freddie Ljungberg was on the right, and Henry and Bergkamp were playing as part of a 2. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how they got to that 3 because they weren't playing a 3. But again, that's them, innit? Yeah, exactly, Zedra. It is more modern now. It is. I think you're gonna see that's the way forward for a lot of teams now. And again, Sham says Henry left Arsenal to win Champions League with Barca. Well, yeah, listen. There's no shame in that, and there's no surprise in that really, because as we know, man, Arsenal have no European pedigree, and Henry knew that, so that's why he had to leave. And look what happens. He goes to Barca, a serious team, and wins it. Yeah, big up to Harsh Rajora. Big up for coming through. So Nick Fadley says the best in terms of skills are Ronaldinho followed by Neymar. These days, no more these kinds. Yeah, Nick, listen, I totally agree with you, man. To think that obviously the era of Ronaldinho and Neymar in their prime and Messi as well. Like, if we look at players now, as I said to you guys before, the only player of real ability that is keeping it alive is Lamine Yamal. And again, Lamine Yamal is a mix of both Neymar and Messi. You can tell. the left foot of Messi and the the close control, and then he's got the arrogance, and the quality and the skill of Neymar. I mean, to be Neymar and Messi wrapped up in one is like you are gonna be the best. Like it's undoubted. Let's be honest. Um, Nick says interesting facts. Eto'o, Figo, Ronaldo, and Luis Enrique played for Barca and Madrid. Yeah, they did, and so did I think there was someone else actually as well, if I remember. I swear there was someone else that done that. Eto'o, Figo, Ronaldo, and Enrique. Pretty sure there was someone else. Can't remember. Yeah, I think there might have been someone else, but yeah, big up, Nick. So Exedra says Shevchenko, Inzaghi, Rivaldo. No, because they didn't play in the free. And Rivaldo was Rivaldo at Rivaldo was at AC Milan, wasn't he? Was he at AC Milan, Rivaldo? I think he was, yeah. But they didn't play in the free because Shevchenko didn't play out wide. He played more through the middle. A big up. So Harsh Rajora says I Show Speed is the best player in the world. He might be one of the most outrageous YouTubers, but best player in the world. Yeah, I think we'll leave that. So Nick says Aguero is not in the same tier as Benzema and Suarez. You know what? That's a big comment, Nick. I have to disagree with that though. They were all in the same tier for me. Aguero, Benzema, Suarez, and Lewandowski. They're all in the same tier. For me, it's about preference. I look at Aguero and Suarez, who are very similar. Obviously, both being South American. One being Argentinian, one being Uruguayan. And then obviously you've got the Europeans in Benzema and Lewandowski. But I think as a four, those four were definitely the best four strikers in the world in their era. And to say Aguero's not in the same class, I don't agree. Because for me, he is. But big up for your comment. Messi was the odd one out in that lineup, in my opinion, because Messi is actually more of a 10. Big up Exedra. Messi's the odd one out in what lineup? In the MSN. Let me know, because if you're talking about Messi being the odd one out in the MSN, I disagree with that, because again, if you've got Messi and Neymar are literally the same kind of players. They're two number 10s, but in a system will play out from wide, but they had three roles. And obviously if you're playing those two as two 10s, and then you've got Suarez as the striker, that balance is perfect. If you look at the system that Man United are playing with the 3-4-2-1, the two number 10s are not wide players, they're number 10s. And in a sense, the way that Barca set up, which is why Dani Alves and Jordi Alba were key, because Dani Alves and Jordi Alba offered the overlap, which meant that the likes of Messi and Neymar could come in field as 10s and create and just have free roles, basically. So if you're mentioning that, if you're talking about the MSN, again, I disagree. Messi was a 10, the same as Neymar in the MSN. And as I said, that balance was perfect, because they're both players that could take you on, didn't have mad pace, but good change of pace. But then the pace and the width was coming from the fullbacks, which is what was important, to allow those players to come in field and create. So Sham says, crazy that Eto'o played for another 8 teams after leaving Barca. Yeah, I think Russian team Anzi Machkala was in there. Obviously Inter, Chelsea. I think there might be a couple of others, can't be like other teams, but yeah, Rakitic was a very good player. He was underrated, Rakitic, and how good Rakitic was is that you look at the midfielders that Barca had when they had the likes of Xavi, hanging up his boots, you know, and then obviously Busquets and Iniesta being a constant. Rakitic, says Fabregas, but Rakitic was a regular star, you know, and again, Rakitic, Croatian international, coming from Sevilla, you know, he fitted that Barcelona team perfectly, you know, and again, was part of the Croatian midfield with Brozovic, Modric, as well. So, yeah, great player, man, Rakitic. Yeah, the friendship MSN was mad. You know, you can tell they got on well. You know, obviously, if you've seen some of the clips where there was times where Suarez was winding up Neymar, you know, and again, their camaraderie was ridiculous, man. And there's no surprising why on the pitch it showed how good they were. Um, yeah, I agree, Zedra, man. Neymar doesn't get the credit he deserves. He doesn't, man. But on this channel, he will do. So Nick says Messi is above Neymar, but in terms of skill, Dino and Neymar. Yeah, listen, I agree, Nick. I agree. I think when we're looking at Messi, and this is why I say Messi is very similar to what Lamine Yamal does. Because if you look at Yamal and you look at Messi, they're two players that they don't do step overs to get past their player, but they just use their ball manipulation and their close control to get past, and their body swerves to get past opponents. Whereas Neymar, Ronaldinho, you know, the Brazilian flair, it's step over, change of pace, you know, off balancing the opposition. So it's a bit different. But in terms of skill, I mean, you have to give it to the Brazilians for sure. But Messi and I say Yamal, they're more, you know, off balancing and using close control to get past their opponent in a sense, you know. But yeah, four great players, man. And as I said, Yamal's only 17, and for me, he's already a great, you know. So Nick says the GOATs are Messi, Maradona, and Pele. Again, I can't argue, but Maradona and Pele wasn't in my era, so I think it's not right me putting them in there. But again, these guys are the godfathers of the game, man. That, you know, whenever you mention, you know, the greats, those two always come up, and rightfully so. So Dortmund is the Arsenal of the German league. Okay. So Zedra says Ronaldo, Rooney, and Tevez was better than Mane, Salah, Firmino. Do you know what? I knew someone would come out with this. Again, that's a tough one because, you know, I mean, my bias would probably just edge towards that because, you know, Mane, Salah, Firmino was good, but Rooney, Ronaldo, Tevez was illegal. It was, I think, in terms of the balance, you might say Salah, Firmino, Mane in terms of, you know, a left-footed player there, right-footed player, and a false nine. Whereas if you look at the Ronaldo, Rooney, and Tevez, you know, there's not no natural wide player there because Ronaldo was at an era where he was playing more in a free role to get numbers. So yeah, it's difficult, but I'm gonna say with my Man United hat on, yeah, Ronaldo, Rooney, Tevez, man, for me, you know. But Mane, Salah, Firmino was mad. Izedra says, by the way, Gav, you gotta have Max Dowman in your next gen. He's incredible. Yeah, big up Izedra. I've seen Max Dowman play a few times, to be fair. Yeah, mate. Yeah, I mean, big up, man, for saying that. Yeah, I might do a stream on him. To be fair, you know, I've got quite a few to get through. Obviously, the most recent one I've done was Claudio Echeverri and Sven Naipan of Man City. And to think that Man City have got so many attackers, young attackers as well, and they've got another one that's come back from loan, and they've added Naipan as well, along with Cherki. Madness. But yeah, Max Dowman, for me, I think he'll be part of Arsenal's squad for next season. But yeah, I've seen him play a few times, and you can already tell that level of football he's playing at is too easy for him. I think the next step for him will be obviously trying to get first team minutes, you know. But yeah, he's a very good player, and as I said, I'll add him to the list of players to do for sure. But yeah, he's a very good player from what I'm seeing. But again, until he gets into the first team and starts making waves there, I think we have to remain cautious at times as well. Big up to Jadon Sanchez. Sorry, it's not Jadon Sancho. Big up, man. Pedro says, now that I think about it, yeah, they both used to tuck in Messi and Neymar, although for some reason I only remember Neymar highlights is on the wings in my memory for some reason. Yeah, listen, again, the way that MSN played, you know, it's again, these things for me are not really hard to kind of differentiate between, because if you look at, like, the prime example is Mane, Salah, Firmino. You've got two wide players, you know, that are wide forwards, and you've got a false nine come attacking midfielder in Bobby Firmino. So the reason that works is because you've got Bobby Firmino, who can drop into the midfield, link the play, and facilitate the wide forwards to get numbers, which is what happened. And then if you look at MSN, the reason why MSN are so good is because you've got the out-and-out goal scorer and the striker in Luis Suarez. But then you've also got Messi and Neymar, who are two number 10s creators, but also get high numbers. You know, and if you're getting that, it's the ultimate, really. So that's the best way to kind of differentiate between those. You know, and again, you know, the reason that they were allowed to come inside as inverted and come in field is because you've got the overlapping fullbacks. And again, this is why you look at PSG now. The reason why PSG is so dangerous is because you've got the overlapping fullbacks in Hakimi and Nuno Mendes, which allows Kvaratskhelia, Doué or Barcola or Dembele out wide to come in field, because you've got the overlapping fullbacks. And this is the way that football's going now. You know, I mean, it has always been there, but Barca's a prime example, really. You know. Yeah, listen, Zedra, Tevez was unbelievable. I think, for me, I would say, you know, and Wayne Rooney for me was a great player. Again, Wayne Rooney was someone that I played against when I was like 13 or 14. So I see firsthand, even at that age, how good Wayne Rooney was. But I'm going to say Carlos Tevez. Carlos Tevez, you know, was... I mean, it's hard to say, man. Carlos Tevez was just slightly better than Wayne Rooney for me. But two great players, man. I think people underestimate Tevez. And again, I think because I've seen so much great footballers, I'm guilty of it, overlooking Tevez. But Tevez was ridiculous, man. Very good. Gamer says Tevez or Henry. Again, Henry for me is probably the best striker to play in the. He's probably the best player to play in the Premier League. You know, and as obviously someone that, you know, obviously Arsenal being a rival, I have no problem saying that, because at the time Henry was in the league, you know, I generally was fair in Arsenal because of Henry and Bergkamp, but especially Henry. So, yeah. But Tevez was a great player, man, for West Ham, for United, and for City. Yeah, listen, I mean, it's no surprise saying Henry over Tevez, because for me, Henry, yeah, he's the greatest player. If I'm looking at the top 3 players ever to play in the Premiership, again, it's difficult to do. But Henry and Hazard for me are in there, and I'm leaving at the likes of Bergkamp, which I can't believe. You know, Gareth Bale, Aguero, you know, players like that. But Henry, Hazard, and probably Luis Suarez, yeah, just ahead of Ronaldo as well. So, and even though Rooney, I mean, it's hard, man. It's hard because there've been some top players, man. But yeah, Henry for me was definitely number 1. But guys, listen up. Big up yourselves for coming on. As I say, went through the whole list. As I said, I'll be putting them into chapters, so you guys can just divert to the ones that you want to see me talk about. So again, I went through all the front threes. So we had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So there was 17 with the Henry, Eto'o, and Messi one as well. So yeah, there was 17 front threes that I could think of that have a worthy shout of being named as the best front three of all time. My best 3, I'm gonna say in order of all time. So third for me, and again, this is difficult. This is very difficult. But I'm gonna say third place. Oh, it's tough, man. Tough. This might shock people, you know, third place. And again, it's hard. It's hard. But I'm gonna say, oh, do you know what? I just see another three. I think the best way to do it is get out the way. If I see the top, if I say my top two, yeah, the top. So for me, number one is Messi, Suarez, and Neymar for me, which isn't a surprise. And then number two, I'm gonna go with Messi, Eto'o, and Ronaldinho. So Messi figuring twice in the top three. So Messi, Eto'o, Ronaldinho second. Messi, Suarez, Neymar the top. And then third, I'm torn between Robben, Ribery, Lewandowski, Bale, Ronaldo, Benzema, and Ronaldo, Tevez, Rooney. So it's difficult, but I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna base this on balance. I'm gonna say Robben, Ribery, and Lewandowski. But again, it's not easy. But yeah, my top three in third: Robben, Ribery, Lewandowski. Second, Messi, Eto'o, Ronaldinho. And then number ones for me, as you can see in the thumbnail, Messi, Suarez, and Neymar for me. Again, not easy because all front threes deserve their mention. But guys, as I said, I'll be putting them into chapters a bit later or probably tomorrow. So yeah, you guys can obviously direct to what I'm actually talking about specifically in terms of how I'm dividing all 17 of them. But yeah, big up yourselves each and every time. Big up to all the mods for coming through. As I said, 11 likes on here. 9 of you watching at the moment. Yeah, make sure you guys subscribe to my channel if you're new in here as well. And again, keep an eye on when I put them into chapters so you can go straight to what you actually want to hear me talk about in terms of those 17 front threes. And as I said, keep an eye on my content. I scheduled today, guys, as I said. Next Monday, obviously, I've got Jonas back on. So we're going to delve into some more football news. Hopefully, there's been some more transfer news as well. And then on the following Friday, 5:30, I've got Flawless back on as well on that Friday. So, yeah, keep an eye out, guys, for the content. I should be back tomorrow as well. Not sure what time. Might be a bit later. So I'm going to start going a bit later now. Possibly, you know, around the same sort of time. You know, 6:30, 7. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, big up yourselves each and every time for coming through. Smash that like button and subscribe to my channel. And I'm going to catch you guys in a bit. Take it easy.